Cargoise Landside is deeply committed to revolutionizing landside logistics. With a complete enterprise system built for modern trucking and container drayage operators that includes proven drayage transportation management, digital rate and quote management, real-time container track and tracing, and on-demand truck, trailer, and container storage. Excellence in container drayage starts with the right software. Enhance transportation management, optimize shipment execution, and improve intermodal business operations with Trinium TMS, Draymaster, GeoStamp Track, and SecureSpace. To learn more, please visit cargoise.com/landside.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to TPM Today. I am going to dispense with the pleasantries today. I hope everyone's doing well wherever you are. I'm still in India, last week of my India summer trip. I'll be back in DC next week and for the next show. I'm going to race through our normal intro stuff just because I have a great guest this week who I think most people will know who he is, and I want to save as much time as possible for our discussion. But really quickly, a few things I wanted to highlight. TPM registration launched last Friday. So we're a week into registration. It's going awesome. It's going really well. So this is the best rates you are going to get for TPM. So if you have an inkling that you want to come, you heard about how great it was, you've been before, just sign up now because these are the best rates you're going to get. That's all I got to say about that. We are also 7 weeks out from our Inland Distribution Conference in Chicago, downtown Chicago. Again, great numbers on that one. We have an absolutely awesome program this year. I think it's better than it's ever been. We have just an amazing array of speakers across virtually every mode and discipline in the domestic transportation world. If you haven't registered for that yet, you can use this code EJ10 for 10% off a new registration. So I hope to see you in Chicago. I love this event. If I'm telling the truth, I actually like it a little better than TPM because it's a little more manageable. I actually have discussions with people, and it's just a lot of fun. So just come and join us in Chicago, end of September. News of the week. All right, I just wanted to highlight one quick story. Actually, my guest today was one of the people that I talked to for this story, so there's a little bit of synergy there. I did a story last week about sort of the rise of code generation and code editing and auditing tools that are taking the technology world by storm right now. I think most people in the logistics world are either totally unaware or relatively unaware of what's going on the software development side and how LLMs and AI are sort of transforming the way companies work. If there's time today, I would love to get into that discussion with my guest because I think it is super important, but that may be a show unto itself because it really is changing how companies hire developers, how much capacity they have to build new product, quickly they can iterate on new products. So definitely encourage you to read the story. There's some awesome quotes from 4 or 5 different software vendors talking about how much these code generation tools have influenced not just their teams, but like the way they work. So definitely encourage you to read that story. But with no further ado, I super delighted to welcome back only the 3rd repeat guest of TPM Today, LogTech Live in its history, Jett McCandless, who's the CEO of a small, tiny company that no one's probably ever heard of called Project 44. I joke, obviously. I think you're one of the few guests that I've had on that probably doesn't need to go into who you are and what your background is. I think most people probably know you by now. But maybe, Jett, first of all, awesome that you can join us today. Maybe just to give a level set for people who are familiar with the name but don't really know kind of where you play. Who are your customers? What are you providing them?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for having me on the show. It's an honor to be back, especially as the 3rd guest in the 4 years. And I made a note on TPM, make sure we're registered for that. And I want to check out the Chicago show. I haven't been on that. Thank you.
It's right. It's literally right in your backyard. It's like 2 blocks away from your office.
Yeah,
so
I'm excited. Yeah. I like the commute time. So As you mentioned, a lot of people probably know Project 44. We're a decision intelligence platform, or think of us maybe as an operating system for supply chain. Our customers are retailers, food and beverage, manufacturers, life sciences, auto, that includes tier one, tech, oil, gas. And then we do have a rather large LSP segment also. And LSP I would define as freight forwarder, 3PL, broker, any of those types of folks. But I always say, like, if you had food in the Western world and it was had any type of temperature control, it probably went through our platform. If you bought anything from a home repair shop, it was. If you bought something on Amazon, if you have a phone in your pocket, whether it's Google or Apple or Samsung, it's a customer. If you have shoes on your feet, it's a customer. If you drove in a car, it's a customer. Toyota, Nissan, Mitsubishi, Subaru, BMW, Ford, list Audi, Volkswagen, everyone. So it kind of goes on and on. But yeah, we're a vertical supply chain software company that doesn't have any real specialization or limitations by the industry.
Yeah. The shipper focus, I think you highlighted well. So I think that's kind of what, not just enterprise, not just shippers, but enterprise, right? Like big, complex supply chains. All right. We have so much to cover, and there's no way we're going to cover it in 24 minutes, but we'll do our best. So let's get into what I think it's fair to say over the past few years, there's been some critique, and I would say constructive critique and some non-constructive critique about the visibility market, right? Which is sort of where P44 sort of evolved from, if that's fair to say. What do you say when I write something to the effect because people are telling me this, or there's someone who writes on LinkedIn, or it's just, there's a conversation about like visibility doesn't work, or it's not meeting sort of the promises that maybe it sort of set out, the visibility market as a whole, and your role in it?
Yeah, so this is good. I'm glad you're asking this question. So I think the first thing that would probably have to do to have a constructive conversation is let's define what visibility is, because I've noticed that it has a lot of meanings to a lot of different people. But if we actually go to the first comment you made, that's where we started. That's actually Act 2 for Project 44. At the core, what we are is a data platform. And you covered this maybe 8 or 9 years ago when you're at another company. And there was this kind of evolution, or this revolution of APIs. And I was always super proud of that because it was on the covers. First time we were on a cover of a magazine and have someone talented like you write about us. And that does make us fundamentally different than other visibility companies that are out there, but also makes it better and work better. But we're that data platform, and then we have a visibility application on top of it, which is just one component. But I would agree in a lot of cases where people say visibility doesn't work when they're talking about it in these kind of abstract ways without clear definitions, or without any true ownership or understanding about how software works just in general. And I would break visibility down into kind of two core ways, and then there's subsets of that. I would say you have transportation and logistics visibility. This is, where's my truck? Where's my container? And an elevated expression of that would be an end-to-end transportation logistics visibility, where you're starting to stitch these multiple modes together. That's what I'd call a transportation logistics visibility. The second thing I would say is that you have inventory in motion or in transit visibility. And this is where you could see at a PO or a part number or a SKU or a batch, or maybe a combination of all those things, where you could see this ideally from country of origin to destination. And so these are different use cases, often different personas within inside organizations, different even personas with different logistics nodes. If we're talking about the LSPs, they tend to focus more on the former. If you're talking to a transportation folk at a shipper, they may talk about the former and a little bit of the latter if they're progressive. If you're talking to the sourcing or planning kind of upstream, more responsibility for the actual product in the organization, they're going to be much more interested in the latter, that transportation in motion. Because that's how they're thinking. Transportation, thinking about a container or a truck is a bit of an inconvenience for an organization, but a reality of life. They just want to sell and make their products and deliver their customers an experience. I think it's the toughest critics of visibility tend to come from the LSP side. And we've been really thoughtful just on how we've approached them over the last couple years. And we basically have come to the decision that the majority of them have never bought tech platforms or put it in scale, haven't implemented things, don't run project plans, have resources, IT resources, or have some of the skills that are necessary for successful implementation. And so what we try to do is we've been trying to push those over to competitors over the last couple of years.
They're just not the right customers for you guys, right?
They might not be good customers for anybody, but so
Fair.
And then what we really focus on is the LSPs that have a mature approach and some experience on how platforms and technology work, and these are things that are relatively basic. If you look in in the world in general, like, do they have an IT team? Do they have project managers? Do they understand that this is software? That software needs change management internally. And that may sound bizarre to some people, and to some people on the phone or here, maybe in comments, it'll start lighting up like, this guy is an asshole or something. Excuse me. This guy's a something. Isn't what he's talking about. But the reality is that software, especially historically, it is changing more as you're bringing in AI, but you have to have some change management that goes with it. And so the best way I would relate it to when people say visibility doesn't work, it'd be like calling Mark Benioff and saying Salesforce doesn't work. Now, we can criticize Salesforce in the UX and the design and things like that. But if Benioff said, well, what do you mean? Why doesn't it work? And they said, well, I signed the contract and I can't get my forecast or do anything. And Benioff says, well, did you have your sales reps type in information? Did you hold them accountable to that?
Yep.
Did you actually put process change in place? Are you using it properly? And they would say no, and they never set it up. And that's kind of like when you hear people say visibility doesn't work. If you really start pulling on that thread, you always go back to, did they actually hold their carriers accountable? Did they put a program in place? Are they actually running change management? And what you won't find is, at least to my knowledge of our over 1,000 customers, you'll never find a company that did all those basic procedures that you need for every platform out there that would say visibility doesn't work. And so you're kind of like telling on yourself on what your own company is and your capabilities and how you operate it from a tech perspective if you say visibility doesn't work, at least if you're using our software. Now, if you're using competitors, I can't speak for that, because I think they fundamentally underneath the guts of them are significantly different than us, going back to that data platform. But
okay, if I think about the evolution that you're on, that point two, the 2.0, whatever the next phase is, like what is the opening line for a customer now that is aware of you as a brand, might have a conception about what you offer, but that might be a dated conception, and what's sort of like the biggest areas of traction you're finding when that message like gets across? Like a two-part question kind of.
Yeah, so I would say, so we've been selective on which LSPs we've worked with, and that's kind of where the muddiest, the water certainly the muddiest. You're right that a lot of companies know us as visibility. There's a book out there called Play Bigger. It's a great book. It basically says like, be the category king, and then profit, and then investments and things will come to you. I read the book. I would add a final chapter to that. It says, well, once you become known as the category king of something, it's difficult to be known as anything else.
Anything, yeah, typecast. You get typecast, right? So
yeah. So that's a better way of saying it. Absolutely. So we've been trying to get out of just visibility for quite some time. And we hired like the agency and everything 3 years ago, and they created one called High Velocity. It was kind of a spin or inspired by Art Mesher's 3 Vs, and it just didn't get traction or resonate. And I think one of the reasons is high velocity is more of an outcome than a category. And so you've seen us go back to the drawing board and say, okay, well, we have 4 product families: an intelligent TMS, next gen TMS, very agentic. Then you have visibility, that transportation and order visibility. Then you have yard management, slot booking, guard shack, the yard, and you have an e-commerce experience. And then you have all these platform features underneath it, like agents, collaboration. Yeah, and just features like vertical and horizontal collaboration and co-pilots and things like that. And you package that all up as that decision intelligence. And I think, where we get traction with is companies that are looking for hard ROIs, that also want to improve their customer experience. They want to decrease their cost. They want to improve their cash flow. They want more efficiencies. And then the 5th one is kind of if they want to measure or minimize their emissions, which tends to be consumer brands or a lot of European brands.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What? So where do you think you are in terms of like bringing that message of where P44 is now versus maybe people's conception of it? Like your existing customers, I would imagine, know it very well. Where do you think the market is in terms of understanding that? Because I asked that because I think that's key. Yeah. Like you guys, for better or for worse, and I would imagine from your sake, it's better. For better or for worse, you are in the vanguard of names that people attach to logistics software, right? So if you are a different company serving different needs and broader needs now than you were 5 years ago, that's important that the market understand that, right?
Yeah. Well, one, thanks for the compliment. We do the best we can, and we're certainly not always perfect, and it is a journey. And I appreciate the market being patient with us as we kind of develop these frontier technologies. I think as the market thinking of it as a decision intelligence platform, also going upstream to planning and sourcing, thinking of us as the next gen TMS and yard and e-commerce. I think that we're in the really early stages of that. To your point, I think knowing us as visibility of the heavyweight champ of that, I think we're kind of typecast in that role. So, we've got to make a lot of changes over there on our marketing and product side, and even on the product side itself. Like, how do you surface these additional ROIs? And I maybe got a little false hope when I saw the really progressive supply chain executives out there, like dig into Project 44, learn about what it is, and go and weaponize it and have these remarkable outcomes. And I was like, oh, this is just going to like happen, kind of domino.
They're at the front end of the bell curve, right? So
that's right. Yeah. That's right. And you're like, oh, wow. Okay. Do I really want to, like, how can we accelerate this? I don't want to wait 5 years. There isn't, although there's so many current events and crises happening, they don't seem to have quite the force that COVID had with visibility. And so, I think that puts a lot more pressure on our sales and marketing team, product team, but I know they're up for the challenge. And, I think getting out here like this is a step in that direction.
So explain. Okay. So there's an interesting thing, I think, on the sales cycle side. This is something I write about a lot, and I have a sort of secondary question about the sales cycle issue, but as it relates to P44 specifically, you have external dynamics that have changed from the pandemic to now, right? Like you had a buying cycle in 2019, you had a buying cycle at the height of the pandemic that was very different, and I would imagine super condensed. And you have a buying cycle now that I would imagine is something, well, I'll let you answer how it is. But so that's the external, and the internal is you're a bigger, broader set of products than you were pre-pandemic. So how has the cycle changed considering those internal and external dynamics?
Yeah, so I would say, I'm not sure how to describe pre-pandemic. I guess I'd have to think about that.
So long ago.
Let's say
like a lifetime ago.
I was gonna say maybe normal, but you had like this really venture fuel type of environment. I don't know. I tend to think of it as like you have the pandemic peak, which was like the 2020, 2021, which is emergency rush. Visibility became mission critical. Sales cycles were compressed. Then you have post pandemic, which I guess people classify as like the new normal. There's more ROI focused. And visibility still had strong need, but it had more buy-in across departments, and folks were trying to figure out one of the problems with visibility, especially transportation visibility, is everyone knows they need it, but the ROI can be a little tough to actually prove. But there's certainly value in knowing where your stuff is at. You get into inventory in motion, and it's really easy. You can say, well, I took 2 days out of my supply chain or out of my inventory, and that's easy.
Turn times were X faster. Yeah.
And then as I'd say, like in the last year-ish, I'd call it faster and focused. Buyers are more educated. Disruptions are expected, but they're very difficult to predict. And urgency remains out there. So we have seen a reduction in our overall sales cycle. But I wouldn't say it's that emergency rush like the pandemic where the fish were just jumping in the boat.
Yeah. So there's urgency, but not desperation, I guess.
That's right.
Okay.
I think for us makes it a healthier cohort of customers.
I would imagine.
Like vintages. That 2021 or 2020-21, that's a tough vintage. From like a cohort, NRR, retention.
I think that's totally not isolated with the tech industry too, right? Like you had a lot of businesses that got fat on some empty calories in that period and forgot like what made a good like business and a good sales kind of structure that have learned the hard way over the last few years. And the ones that didn't lose those principles are still doing fine right now, even if the market's a little trickier, right? So
that's right.
Okay. One thing I've written a lot about, and I think you're sort of very in the middle of this issue, is we have not seen, so we are now 13 years-ish into this VC era of logistics tech.
Yeah. We've
not seen a single major IPO. We've not seen a single, what I would call major acquisition of a VC-backed company. So my view on this is that, and I asked the sales cycle question before I asked this, because my view on this is the sales deliberation of the market hasn't been the cleanest fit for the way VCs view returns of their companies. And I'm just curious for your opinion. You're obviously like in the center of the storm on this, right? Because you have ambitions to make this company as big and successful as it can possibly be. You've taken a pretty big chunk of venture, and you're selling into a market that is going to do its own thing when it comes to deciding on products. So I guess my question is, are we going to see an IPO of a major IPO of a logistics tech company?
Yeah. So yes, we will. I find what's kind of fascinating is that there's no Gen 2 logistics tech that's IPO. And I think that's kind of what you're talking about, this kind of 13 year. If we look at who's public right now, WiseTech, Descartes, Trimble, I'm sure there's someone else. I'm forgetting.
Manhattan. Yeah,
Manhattan. That's another great one. And then you have like even Blue Yonder, who's big. But these are all Gen 1s. To my knowledge, all those companies started on-prem, and their tech stacks are probably
90s. 90s.
Yeah, so really, really old. And I think the market's obviously changed since they IPO. We right there on our side, like we have a commitment and a goal to go IPO. That's what the board wants to do. That's what the management team wants to do. It's what the team wants to do. I also think that there's kind of a misconception out there about even what it means to go public and what the advantages and disadvantages are with it. But what I would say is I don't know if there is a Gen 2 company right now in logistics tech that's big enough to go public. And let me narrow that down.
The goalposts have moved, right? The goalposts have moved. Yeah.
That's right. Like it used when it was kind of the height during one of those pandemics, you could do it at 100 million and have a pretty good outcome. Like we certainly would qualify for that. But I was at a hedge fund conference 2 weeks ago in Jackson Hole, and they were saying that 500 million in ARR is the new standard. And I think maybe it's a provocative statement. Someone else said, I think Morgan Stanley said, like 250, 300, but they're incentivized, right? They're in the business of it.
Sure.
And the other person was more trying to be objective about it, of like, well, how does you create the best outcome for the shareholders? You've got to have this kind of this dollar amount. And so that is really, really difficult. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but it's something like less than 1,000. It's less than 1 out of 10,000 venture-backed companies get to 50 million. Once you get to 50 million, less than 1,000 of those get to 100 million.
Yeah.
From my knowledge, the only guys that are over 100 million are Samsara, which has hardware, O9, and us. There's no one else out there that's even over that. And then you go to this 100 million to 500, and we certainly are not at 500, and neither is O9. And Samsara is already IPO'd, and again, hardware. I think they run a phenomenal business over there. So that doesn't leave a lot of folks out there. But I also think if you kind of deconstruct it and you look at well, why is it so hard in the industry? It's for a number of reasons. I think historically, supply chain folks haven't had a lot of budget to buy technology. They have massive budgets for procurement. And so we are kind of in this beginning of these folks getting more comfortable buying tech, looking at ROI, implementing these software. The second thing is that my head of people worked for Travis at Uber. She worked at Google. She worked for Jack at Twilio. She took Nubank through their IPO. So this is a really amazing tech executive, right? And we had someone really talented that had been with me for 8 years, resigned last week for a number of reasons around family and more like work-life balance. Very talented individual. And she said, normally we would celebrate this at, say, Uber, kind of this talent exporter. And she's going to LinkedIn. And she goes, but the challenge with Project 44 is that this industry requires so much depth of knowledge. You can't.
Domain expertise. Yeah. Yep.
And that is a problem. I think it's a barrier for really growth, because if you take a SaaS executive that's IPO'd and you bring them in, you've got this long ramp time to make logistics. And if you take enterprise SaaS executives, well, there aren't many of them that have much left in their career that have actually ever gone through an IPO before.
Right.
Or gone to this kind of scale from this $100 million to $500 million range. So it does. There are some obstacles in there. At the same time, I think the market will be very responsive in a positive way to a Gen 2 logistics tech IPO, because if you're in the public markets, you can't get any exposure to that at all. And you're going to exposure to that Gen 1. So I think that'll be really be interesting when that starts to unload.
Well, I think again, this is my feeling in talking with VCs over the years, is everybody has been waiting for that benchmark event to happen, right? In essence, it's everything is in limbo until that happens. And then you get a sense of how to properly evaluate what a business is worth. Also, to your last point, I've looked at companies that I think that have been public that are fairly small, that were taken public, that were completely overlooked on the retail investor side, because at that point the retail investors didn't understand logistics, didn't know about global trade, didn't know about transportation. So they just had no frame of reference to even know if this company was good, like a high performing company or just an average company, right? And so you need that for that investor to have a reference point for themselves too. So it's super interesting. I think everybody is still waiting for that. And I think you're on the short list of companies that people are definitely waiting for. So we have to see how that plays.
Yeah, what I could say is that we've invested in a lot of IPO readiness.
We had talked about this like 2 years ago, right?
Yeah.
Before the market bottomed.
Yeah. Well, and I'm glad we didn't, because that would have been a pretty nasty thing. There are a lot of advantages, of course, of being private, that you can tinker and you can experiment more and you can get other product lines going. But I expect we're at a watershed moment in the next 12 to 24 months.
Well, and I know we're going past time. Sorry, Nicole, our producer. I can feel her metaphorically tapping on my shoulder. But I think the subtext also on the staying private longer, right? Like that's a phenomenon as well, right? VC companies have on the whole stayed private a lot longer than they did than previous cohorts would have. So that's the thing that's not even only about the logistics industry. That's just across VC-backed companies. So we may just need to be more patient in waiting for that event. So I knew we wouldn't get to everything. I wanted to talk to you about the AI stuff, especially the stuff that you're doing on the back end. I would encourage people to read that story I referenced, because I quote Jett pretty heavily in that, and he goes into detail about how P44 is using some of these tools. We'll talk about that stuff in more depth on another chat. But I have to ask you, favorite question for my guests: who's your favorite band or musician, and why?
This is a pretty lame answer.
There are no bad ansers.
I would say I let Spotify do the heavy lifting, and I just I don't listen to music much at all. In the car, I just sit there and think. At home, I just think, or I play with the kids. But if I do find myself, I let Spotify do all the heavy lifting. I know it's super lame, and I just match it up for whatever it is. If you're in Wyoming, you play country. If you're in Cargoise, I listen to rap.
Leave it to the algo. It's all good. Right. All good. Well, I appreciate it. You got a lot on your head these days, right? You need some clarity of thought every once in a while. So I totally appreciate it. Well, Jett, thanks so much. I appreciate it. I appreciate the frank thoughts on everything, and it's always great to talk. And hopefully we'll see you in Chicago in a couple weeks.
Perfect. Thanks, Eric. Ciao.
Yeah. Bye. All right. I knew this was going to run over. Sorry. Real quick, dad joke of the week time. This is you're going to have to put your thinking cap on for this one. This is not like a easy one to, I don't want to spoil it. Okay. So dad joke of the week. How do you think the unthinkable? With an iceberg. Notice the way I said iceberg. It's a Titanic joke. How do you sink the unsinkable? Anyway, this is a terrible joke. I was advised against telling it, but I should, I feel like you need an audience for this one, and I'll be better next show. Thank you everyone for tuning in. I appreciate all the support for the show. Hopefully we'll see you at Inland in 7 weeks. Register for TPM. Again, these are the best rates you're going to get. Thanks so much to Jett. Really appreciate him making some time and giving some great thoughts on the industry. And thanks to everyone on the Let's Talk Supply Chain team. I'll see you all. Have a great weekend. Bye.